You're thinking about selling your home and you're kind of thinking, I could probably do that myself. Maybe I should for sale by owner. Perfectly great question, something I thought myself before I became an agent, so I'm gonna answer that question for you today. We're gonna cover two main topics. The first one is gonna be, what's an agent even do? Obviously you need to understand the role you'd be taking on if you chose to sell your own home. And number two, we're gonna be talking about what the potential savings could be for you. We'll talk about all the numbers, commissions, fees, and everything else right now. All right, let's start with what's an agent even do? And what would you be doing if you were selling your own home? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give you literally my entire playbook of what I do to get homes sold, and you can steal it. Get a pen and a paper and write this down because I'm gonna give you all the things you need to know to get your home sold. Number one is gonna be pricing that home correctly. Now, this will take two main things that I want you to think about. First of all, where's the market trending coming into your sale? Are we going up? Are we going down? Are we in a buyer's market or seller's market? How aggressive can you be on the price? Then the second thing you're going to think about is, what are the other comps doing currently? Now, this is sold comps of what's recently sold that's similar to your home, and what are homes currently priced at? What's our current active competition? So of course you can look at a home and you can say, all right, that one's a little bit nicer, and therefore it's more expensive. This one's not as nice as mine, so that one's less expensive. And then you can figure out kind of that nice little niche of where your home would fit in between. Next, let's talk about preparing your home. And the first step is going to be hiring a stager. Now, I'm sure you're thinking, my home's good enough, it looks fine. Here's what you need to understand. I personally write a check for every single listing for a stager to come into my client's home because it's that important, and I would strongly advise you not to skip that step. What a stager is able to do for you is they can really see through the eye of a camera. So if they're thinking of their photo in your living room, let's say, they can understand that chair's not gonna look great there. Move the chair to this wall. How about you move this piece of artwork from this wall to that wall, right? If you want to maximize that perceived value, you have to be willing to invest the time and money to get there. Next will be hiring professional pictures. And a lot of people these days just think, well, you know, I got the latest and greatest iPhone, I can just take some pictures with that. No. I've got a great iPhone. I've got a very nice camera that I'm recording this on. I understand that you could do pictures yourself. However, that's another thing that I personally pay for every single time. I won't take my own pictures almost ever because they've got such better cameras. They've got the wide angle lens. My photographer does like 5 different images with different settings, and then they splice them all together so that the lighting just looks fantastic. It truly makes a huge difference. So do not skip on paying a professional to do those pictures for you. All right, now let's talk about marketing your home. You've got the home priced, you got it staged correctly. Here's my marketing plan of everything I do. First of all, of course, we'll get you into the MLS. That's where I think it's about 89–90% of all buyers have an agent, and all of those agents are going to have their clients on an MLS search. So you definitely want to get yourself into the MLS. From what I understand, that could cost you $1,000 to $1,500 to have a company put you into the MLS, but it's definitely worth it. Again, because almost 90% of the buyers that would be interested in your home are going to be shopping there first. Of course, we'll put a for sale sign in the front yard. Generally about 5 to 6% of buyers will come strictly because of that for sale sign. And that will also help us with open houses. Now, a lot of people think open houses are dead. Open houses are not dead, my friend. I've sold several in the past few years just strictly because of an open house. So make sure you're doing open houses. Next, we're gonna make sure we're doing a lot of agent-to-agent marketing. This is also super important. We sell quite a few homes just between other agents. I'll be at a team meeting or maybe post in one of our internal groups and say, hey, I've got this listing coming on in this city in this price range. Let me know if you have a buyer. And they will jump on that and they'll say, hey, I've got a buyer, can we go see it tomorrow? And we'll get them in just as soon as we can. So agent to agent is very important. Last on our list is gonna be virtual tours. Now, let's look at this from a spectrum. On one end, you've got homes that have very few photos and they're terrible photos. On the other end of the spectrum is gonna be your listing and mine, where we've got really nice pictures, professionally done, and virtual tours. Virtual tour is really just pushing you to the other extreme. By doing that, we're gonna get the most number of buyers interested in your property with the highest perceived value of that home. If they've got a home with crappy pictures, they're probably gonna just keep looking. If it's got great pictures and a virtual tour and they can virtually walk themselves through, or they can see some kind of a video of what it would be like to own that home, they're going to be a whole lot more interested in that home than the other. So make sure you're considering doing a virtual tour on the property as well. All right, now that you understand what a listing agent does and what you can do to get your home sold if you should choose, let's next talk about the potential savings that you've got if you chose to sell your home yourself. First of all, we need to back up and understand how commissions work with real estate. I'm just going to use some round generic numbers from kind of common numbers that I've seen in the market. Of course, real estate commissions are always negotiable, but let's just use 6% for an example listing agent's commission that they might charge. So of that 6%, about half of it will go to your listing agent's brokerage, and half of it gets actually paid out to the buyer's agent's brokerage. So what that means is when you sell your home, you pay both sides of that commission, and when you purchase a home, you don't pay any commission in most cases. So again, about 90% of the buyers coming in will have an agent of their own, and in essentially all of those instances, that buyer is not paying their agent's commission. So then let's say you're paying about 6% if you go to list your home with an agent. Of that 3% that comes to their listing brokerage, the brokerage takes their split, the agent gets the remaining balance. Of that, the agent's got to pay out to the government, they've got to run their business, and then they've got to market your property. What's left over after all of that is what actually is the agent's income. So then if you sold your home yourself, really what we'd be cutting out is that 3% that goes to the listing agent brokerage because you'd be doing it yourself. In most cases, you're still going to be paying out that buyer's agent's commission. And here's why. First of all, a lot of sellers do want to say, you know what? I'm just not paying that at all. I'm just going to save the whole 6%. Perfectly understandable, and that is your right to do as a seller. However, you should understand that that buyer is going to then still have to pay their agent. Okay? Obviously, the agent themselves is not going to just not get paid for helping that buyer and doing all the showings, writing up all the paperwork, and managing the transaction. They're still going to get paid. So it's either going to come out of your pocket or the buyer's pocket. And the question becomes, why would that buyer want to buy your home when it's going to cost them, let's call it 3% in cash to purchase your home, when they can go buy any other home on the market that's sold through an agent and not have to pay a commission? Ultimately, the only reason they would be willing to do that is either they got a screaming deal on the property, or they negotiated you down approximately 3%, or they've actually asked you to contribute to their closing costs, which seems like it would be for their down payment or something else, but in reality, it's to cover the commission that they're gonna have to pay anyways. So even if you straight refuse to pay the buyer's agent's commission, it's probably going to get paid out of some other part of the transaction. So let's say you're saving 3% from the listing agent's commission, you're paying out 3%, so your total potential savings is going to be roughly 3%. However, you've also got to minus the additional costs that you've taken on from doing the work yourself. The stager, the photographer, the sign, MLS access fee, getting your real estate forms for that purchase agreement, and then an attorney to look over the entire transaction. 3% minus all of those costs, that's really what your potential savings could be if you did choose to sell your home yourself. But don't check out yet. There's 3 things that you've got to understand if you're going to attempt it. First is going to be exposure and demand. Second is going to be that perceived value. And third is going to be the friction a buyer senses in purchasing your home versus another. If you're not paying out a buyer's agent commission, that's obviously going to create a ton of friction for a buyer that's coming in to purchase the home. Therefore, it's going to be dropping demand, and they're probably going to see it as a lower perceived value if there's that expense coming with it when there's not with any other home they're probably looking at. What about if the seller's present for showings? That's going to be the assumption with a FSBO. That's going to create a bunch of friction in the home. They're going to have a much harder time seeing themselves in the home. Therefore, their perceived value is probably going to be less, and they're not going to give it nearly as much time to think about. What about if you don't do all of the marketing things that I just mentioned? Obviously, less marketing is going to mean less exposure, which is going to mean lower demand, and therefore lower perceived value from the home because it doesn't look like $1 million, so they're not going to be paying $1 million, so to speak, for your home. And I should remind you, the buyer's represented by a professional negotiator who knows exactly what they're doing. They know all the ins and outs, they know all the caveats, all the way they can get the best deal for their buyers because they do this all the time, and you've got to be prepared to be able to negotiate against that. So again, could you get your home sold? Absolutely no problem. But the question becomes, who's going to get the highest exposure for the greatest demand with the highest perceived value with the easiest transaction of getting a buyer into the home and into your property as easily and quickly as possible? An agent only has to do this much better marketing, this much better pricing, this much better negotiating just to offset that little 3%. And it's a total accumulation of all of those things put together to only have to get 3% higher to completely offset the expense of hiring that agent. I think most sellers would say they're not going to be as good of a marketer, as good of a negotiator as a professional listing agent, but of course, they're not paying the commission, so maybe it's worthwhile anyhow. Let's say best case scenario, you net the same dollar amount because you got lower terms, but you didn't have a commission, versus paying an agent, getting better results, but paying a commission. Let's just say best case scenario, your net is the same amount. At the end of the day, what was your headache worth? Because in reality, you got stuck with doing all the work yourself for the same net dollar amount, except for you came out with a headache and I didn't. I want to leave you with two things. First of all, I sell homes for an average of 2.4% higher than the MLS average. Second, I sell homes in 31% fewer days on market. So what does that mean? That means of just the average agent you would hire, you're going to get 2.4% more on average just from the sales price, not even including any of the rest of the terms that we negotiate. Second is you can sell your home in about a third less time. That means a whole lot less headache, a whole lot less hassle for doing showings and everything else, and we can get your home sold very quickly and very profitably. So when you're ready for help, or if you have any more questions, just reach out, shoot me a private message, and we can talk, or a text or an email is great as well. Of course, here's another great video just for you as a seller, and I'd love for you to subscribe so you get more great content every week.